Bruce.
Right, good morning everyone again. Yeah, thanks for coming to listen. What I want to do in my talk today is tell you about 40 years of experience. And so I'd like an hour for this talk, and they only gave me 15 minutes. So please fasten your seat belts and let's hang on for the ride. So I'm going to go very quickly through it. But as far as I know, this is a unique idea that was started off in the De Hoop Marine Protected Area in South Africa, and it's involving volunteer anglers to monitor the effectiveness of our marine protected areas. And I'd just like to thank my co-authors, Lisa, Colin, Warren, Keith, and Karen, who helped me put the talk together and some of the slides that I used. So the objectives is really to explain the involvement of volunteer anglers, who we also call citizen science, in MPA monitoring in South Africa, to provide a snapshot of some of the projects and the achievements, and then really to highlight the approach as a model for potentially monitoring other MPAs around the world using this approach. So to start off with, yeah, we're now quite proud of our MPA network in South Africa. Prior to 2019, we only had 0.4% of our economic exclusive zone in terms of area covered in MPAs, but as of after 2019, we had 20 new MPAs proclaimed, so we've got a reasonable network of 5.4%. 3% of our EEZ, so it's 60% of our marine protected areas are no-take, which is very high internationally, and we're very proud of that. But the ones that I want to talk about are the ones highlighted in yellow here. So I'm going to start down in De Hoop. De Hoop is about 50 kilometers of shoreline going out 3 nautical miles, established in 1984. Tsitsikamma is our oldest MPA in South Africa. It's established when I was born in 1964, so I know it's 62 years old. Also about 60 k's of shoreline and going out 3 nautical miles. The next one is Dwesa-Cwebe in the Wild Coast or Transkei, quite close to us here, established in 1991. And then Pondoland, about 90 k's of coastline, extending out 10 kilometers out to the sea to the 1,000-meter depth contour, established in 2004. And then the last one is the iSimangaliso MPA, which is our biggest MPA in South Africa, excluding the Prince Edward Islands, which is down in the Southern Ocean. That's about 200 kilometers of coastline, goes out about 60 kilometers to sea there and about 34 kilometers there. The first part of that MPA was established in 1979 off St. Lucia, and then it expanded in 2019 to become our biggest MPA, and it's now part of a World Heritage Site. So that's our MPA network, and those are the ones that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to show this map again, so just remember Hoop, Tsitsikamma, Dwesa-Cwebe, Pondoland, and iSimangaliso. All right, so how these things work very briefly is you start off with selecting your anglers and training them. So you need a group of volunteer anglers who've got the time and the passion to join you on these projects and to fish in these areas. Right up front, you have to establish quite strict rules for angler behavior on the trips, because otherwise things could get out of control quite easily. So you need areas that we can work in and behavior that is applicable to these MPAs. Most of them work on 4 to 6 field trips a year, and for them, most of them are either 2-day or 4-day field trips duration. So the fishing is done in the MPAs and either in the no-take zones or in the adjacent zones, and those may either be partially used or they may be fully exploited zones. So it's a mixture of both, and I'll show you what happens as we go. It's all done using rod and line fishing. Some of them are boat-based projects, some of them are shore-based projects. Over time, as we've learned how to handle and improve our handling, we've gone over to circle hooks mostly, and we crimp the barbs on all our hooks. So we're trying to minimize hooking injuries. stress good handling, so we train our anglers on how to handle the fish well. Measurements are all done on sort of stretches like this, so we try and measure very precisely. For the fish species that we're interested in, we're using external dart tags, so fish bigger than 30 centimeters of select species, and we get our tags from the ORI Cooperative Fish Tagging Project, which Chantal is going to be talking about this afternoon. So if you're interested, go and listen to that. And then each fish gets an accurate recording of GPS where it is, and each individual keeps a slate and records his own effort, his catch, and then we record that daily in the evenings onto the database. So just to start off and show some of the some of the projects, this is the oldest one. The WRFC was established in 1984, so it started 3 years after proclamation, and it was really to try and monitor the MPA and recovery. It's been run by Colin Atwood and Bruce Bennett, were the guys that really started it in the early days. So it's a sort of collaboration between the University of Cape Town and Department of Fish and Forestries and the Environment. It's a shore-based trip. They have 6 trips per year. They have 2 areas that they fish. One's called Lakavata, one's called Kopialian. Each area is 3 kilometers in distance, and they alternate each trip. So one trip will be Lakavata, next trip will be Kopi, and so on. So 3 trips in each area. To date, they've had 275 field trips. It's been running for 38 years. They've tagged an amazing 68,000 fish in this project over that time, an incredible 5,000 recaptures. 292 anglers have participated in this project over the years, and it's resulted in 40 peer-reviewed publications. So it's been an incredible project that's really taught us an enormous amount about that MPA. The next one is Tsitsikamma, our oldest MPA. This was started by Professor Paul Cowley over there, and our friend Warren Potts joined in later on. It was run by Rhodes University and the South African Institute for Aquatic Biodiversity with support from South African National Parks. Again, it was a shore-based. It was 4 trips per year normally, and they only fished 1 4-kilometer area just south of the Blowkans River. You can see from this photograph that you literally had to be a bit of a rock rabbit or a mountain goat to get down to the water, and so you had to be fit. And that's why it stopped, I think, because we all got too old to kind of get down to the water. 87 field trips, 8,000 fish tagged, 600 recaptures, 88 anglers participated in it, and 15 publications have come out of it. So really, really important in helping us manage these MPAs better. Next one, Dwesa-Cwebe, a little bit later, and Sasanda had a poster on the poster evening on this particular project. It was started by Eastern Cape Parks and Tourism Association, again shore-based. They had sort of 3 different areas, 2 that were partially exploited and 1 no-take zone in the middle. They tagged 5,800 fish, very few recaptures, probably because of the extent of the area that they were fishing in, 58 anglers and 2 publications. It was started by Jan Venter and John Creef from Eastern Cape Parks, and then taken over by Karen and her team after that. The next one, Pondoland. This is a big MPA, and it was proclaimed in 2004. So we wanted to establish a monitoring program quite soon after that to look at how things change. So it was run by myself with support from Eastern Cape Parks. It was a boat-based trip, so we had 2 square kilometer areas in the no-take zone, and similarly 2 square kilometer areas in the exploited zone, and we fished in each of those zones in the same way using the same anglers. 52 field trips, 5,000 fish tagged, incredible recapture rate. I mean, 27% recapture rate, largely because resident reef fish were the main species that were being hit. Less anglers, but I had 72 anglers come on the trip, so we used to try and take at least 1 guest angler on each trip just to get these projects being experienced by the anglers out there. And 9 publications, and Jade Maggs over there got his MSc out of this project. And then the last one, the iSimangaliso MPA. ran for 20 years. Again, this was my pet project, and I absolutely loved this project. And yeah, we heard a bit about Rob Carl. He helped me a lot with this project as being my sort of second in charge of the project, using 2 vehicles. It was a shore-based project. The park is big, 200 k's, so we split it up into different areas that we monitored over time. 93 field trips, 11,000 fish tagged, 1,500 recaptured, 136 anglers that participated in over those years, 16 publications, including my PhD, which was a labor of love, doing a PhD on this kind of research and a great team. So I think a critical element of all these research projects is that they are reliant on voluntary members of the angling public, and either the scientist or the technician coordinates the field trips, but it's allowed all these anglers to experience firsthand the size and abundance of fish in our MPAs. I mean, you can give talks, you can tell people, but you take them into an MPA and allow them to see the abundance and the size of fish they're catching. It's incredible. And those guys become ambassadors for the continued existence of these MPAs, not to mention the skills that we teach them in terms of handling and tagging fish. So what have we learned? How much time ago? 3 minutes. Okay, what have we learned? We've learned a lot. To summarize it very quickly, we've learned that a lot of our species obviously are very resident, and also obviously in the no-take areas, much more fish, much bigger fish. Lots of them have very small home ranges, as Warren and so have been talking about, so it makes them more vulnerable to capture. Although most of our reef fish show this incredible residency in small home ranges, a proportion of their population tends to be genetically pre-programmed to be movers. So with almost all of our species, we find a percentage of them that do move. And because of that, these are adult fish normally, they tend to move over into the adjacent areas, which is it's not a density-dependent spillover, but it is export of fish out into the adjacent areas, which we've been able to monitor in a number of our MPAs. Some species we've learned, like the red steenbras and the Scotsman, very, very resident as juveniles in the MPA, and then they take a migration, a slow movement up north where the adult populations are found. That's where spawning happens, but they don't move back. It's just a one-way movement up the coast. Species such as the GTs and our Leophis or Garrick, we didn't think that MPAs were important for these species because they're highly migratory. But now we're learning that a lot of them return to a home base. They go and spawn, but then they come back to their posi, the spot where they know. And if that is in an MPA, they get that protection. Calculation of growth rates on species like speckled snapper, black mussel cracker from tag and release has shown that these fish live for in excess of 30 to 40 years, which is quite incredible, making them more vulnerable. On conclusions, got 1 minute. Lots of field trips, lots of fish caught and tagged. It's contributed to a lot of science over the last 40 years. We've shown evidence of spillover. Several cases, importantly, the work has led to improved zonation and management of the MPA. So it's fed directly into improving our management. A lot of time and effort has gone into these projects, but they've been done at a fraction of the cost of the traditional methods that use. So we're using volunteers to help us do the work. The experience that these anglers has made them strong advocates for MPAs, and they share that with their fellow anglers. So it's been a real nice project to move that information through the angling communities. And I really think that this approach could be replicated in some of the other MPAs around the world. So I'm done. Thank you for your attention, and thank you to all the sponsors and people involved. Did I do it?
Yes, you did it. Well done. You got 30 seconds for a question. Do we have a 30-second question for Bruce? Now you know the secret of a happy marriage. Lots of field trips.
Thanks, Judy.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Bruce. And now we're heading off to Australia with Cassie Price. Cassie, over to you.
Thanks, Judy. And